technology platform, and I'm also general partner of the first technology incubator in Southeast Asia, which is called TechGrind, and we're located over by Liberty Plaza, in Liberty Plaza by Tonga. So what I'm talking about tonight is Lean Startup and how we use it to build startups. These are a few of the startups that I've built. Two of those are billion-dollar companies. Actually, three of them. I just don't know the value of that one, Anchor Free, quite yet. But the rest of them have exited, and those are some of the companies that I built. So, what is an entrepreneur? I wanted to get into that first. What is an entrepreneur? Actually, before I show that slide, does anybody want to give a stab at that? What an entrepreneur is? Let's remove the slide so you're not looking at it. So let's get at least two people to raise their hand and to give an example of what they think the word entrepreneurship means, what an entrepreneur is. Or I'm just going to start picking somebody at random. How about you? So what's an entrepreneur?
You can talk about the new innovation, or even just use the present process and improvement of the better outcome of the current process. So pretty much,
is someone that innovates something new or improves an existing model.
Yeah.
That's a good shot at it. That definitely has some very strong value in it. Anybody else want to take a crack at it?
Sorry, can something put on the microphone?
You need me to? Can everybody hear me?
No, it's not recording. It's supposed to record.
Oh, okay. Can I put that one?
Yeah, yeah. All right.
You're recording me? That wasn't part of the deal. I'll have to charge extra for that. Does that work? Yeah, sort of. Turn it on. All right, does that work? Good. So let's take somebody else. You in the back. What do you?
No, I was just waiting to him.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. What's an entrepreneur?
Congratulations to him.
Okay. Well, what's an entrepreneur then? Give us another.
It's a free spirit willing to take big risks and make lots of mistakes.
Okay, that's something I like to hear too. So I'm actually just going to go back to the original definition of the word entrepreneur from France, 1723, whereby they defined the word entrepreneur or entrepreneur as an enterprising individual who builds capital through risk and or initiative. So somebody who enterprises, creates new enterprise, they build new wealth, they build new jobs, capital, through taking risk and initiative. And that was the original definition in 1723. And then we jump up to 1985 in England, where the definition really hasn't changed. So the word entrepreneur, you guys both nailed elements of what entrepreneur is, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. So what I wanted to sort of poke at here was what entrepreneur means with startups, because that's what we do. So an entrepreneur in our industry is someone who can confidently say that I don't know and be comfortable with that. So these are actually three very powerful words. There are three words that I try to remember on a daily basis. There's something about the business, there's something about my customers, there's something about whatever we're doing that I simply don't know. And if I keep that in my mind, I'm able to actually learn from what I do on a daily basis. I'm able to absorb information easier and thereby produce more capital through risk and initiative. So a lean entrepreneur, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight, is someone who can adamantly know that their ideas are actually outright wrong. Not only do they not know something, but they're actually wrong about what they think that they know. And I like to use a quote from Mike Tyson here. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So yeah, you have a plan when you're boxing, and then all of a sudden you get punched in the face, and your plan didn't work. So that's a good example of being wrong about something and suffering the consequences. So I wanted to get into now what does it make? What are the qualities that make an entrepreneur? What are the two most important things? And I like to put this slide on most of my presentations. Some of you have seen it before, obviously, because I think it's really important. It gets down to what I believe is the core values and characteristics that make an entrepreneur. Is what I call the two A's. So attitude and ability.
Attitude has to do with things like thinking positively, being an optimist. An entrepreneur, especially a startup entrepreneur, really has to be a diehard optimist, really has to see the best in everything and pursue that. And that's hard because a lot of the time you'll run into failure, you'll run into people that aren't easy to do business with, and you just have to be as positive as possible to bring out the best result in every situation that you're in. So being adaptable, being able to be flexible and negotiate in every situation, being adaptable, not being confined by rules or structure and things like this is also really important. And that's an attitude, a mentality kind of a thing. Preferring to take action rather than planning. So instead of sitting there and thinking and planning out and writing 50-page documents on what you think should happen, actually going and doing it instead and learning through the process of doing. Which also falls into seizing opportunity. People that are able to seize opportunity, that's a unique, I wouldn't say maybe unique, but that's a very important trait of an entrepreneur. And also very, very important thing through both attitude, and you can see the same thing down in ability, is the ability to fail and learn, which we created a hashtag a few years ago called Flern. So you can sort of check on Twitter, and there's some postings from people from time to time that post some interesting things about their failings and learnings. The other side of the coin is ability. So entrepreneurs, especially startup entrepreneurs, really need to have skills that they can execute with. There's no such thing as a manager in a startup. Managers are dead weight in startups. So if somebody is simply telling everybody else what to do, they're not a founder, they're not a startup entrepreneur, they're a manager. Now in corporates and hierarchical, structural, big enterprises and things like that, managers are obviously necessary. That's what managerial sort of middle management was invented from. Most of the business school world was actually invented to fill those jobs and create managers. So a lot of the courses taught here at SASIN, for example, won't be so much entrepreneurial or startup entrepreneurial, but we'll focus on building the middle management for big corporations and MNCs and things like that. But we don't do that. We don't even have room for those people in our entities, our organizations. We need every single person on the team to actually be an execution kind of a person, a hands-on product person or biz dev person or marketing person actually doing the work. The ability to learn quickly is really important. The ability to take pressure. So especially in startups, entrepreneurs in general, but even 10 times more in startups, entrepreneurs and founders are under intense pressure all the time. You have to be comfortable with that. I like to equate actually building a startup to going to war. So hopefully, I hope none of you have had the displeasure of going to war, but I can tell you it's pretty similar. So that's why actually, a lot of ex-military people do become quite good at handling pressure. And that's a very important thing, to be able to handle pressure. Hopefully you can do it in another way than going to war. Then of course the ability to fail and learn from it. So these are what I believe the most important things to being an entrepreneur. I also put these two models in here, what zero sum is and non-zero sum, to emphasize the mentality of these things and sort of explain that. These slides are all available online actually. By the way, I'll give you the link afterwards so you can check them out if you're interested. So what I wanted to do, by the way, I did this whole presentation in a format called the BML loop. Does anybody in here know what the BML loop is? No? Okay, that's good. Okay, we got one. So a few. So the BML loop is actually a tool that we use in startups. It's called the Build, Measure, Learn loop, the BML loop. It's a tool that we use in startups to actually format what activities we're going to do on a cyclical basis to produce the outcome that we're looking for, which is to learn about customers and then build a product that customers want, because you're taking risk and initiative to build new business. So building, measuring, and learning are the three activity cycles that you go through to build a startup in pretty much all contexts. So this whole presentation is actually built on a BML loop to talk about that, as well as sort of expose people to that. I didn't mention that in the beginning, which I should have. So I hate doing presentations where I'm just sitting here and talking and you guys are falling asleep. So I want to now get you guys involved in this. I want to have at least 2 people come up and pitch an idea. If you're working on a business right now, that would be great. I know you're working on a business, so you're going to pitch. I know you two are working on a business, so you're going to pitch. So we'll have these two come up, and then just one other person in the room. Anybody that's working on an idea, a business, wants to do something. Okay, we got a volunteer there. Good. So, Surasi, please come up and pitch your business in 60 seconds or less. Yes.
So basically, I'm Sursit. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hungry Hub, online restaurant reservation system, similar to Agoda for hotels, but this is for restaurants. Basically, you book through a mobile app without having to call restaurants. And you get instant confirmation, which is 24/7 without having to wait. We have started about 10 months ago. Now we have 120 restaurants sign up on our list, majority targeting medium to high-end restaurants. We have around more than 2,000 registered users. We partner up with BKK Menu, which is one of the top review websites in Bangkok. And we're talking with Bangkok.com, which is owned by Expedia. It's one of the top ones to partner up with. So we're looking to expand right now and raising funding of $500,000 US. Yep, so that's it.
Okay, great. How about you girls come up? One of you come up and bite the bullet.
Do I need to be standing in front?
Oh no, you can do it there if you don't want the stage.
Okay, so basically we are in the more initial phase comparing to what he's doing. So our applications, we are initiating applications in order to compare telecoms and mobile plans because we are focusing on deliver the best deal for the users. And our application is now targeting mostly on any mobile users domestically and also internationally. But for first phase, we're going to focus more on Thailand. And our business model is more on B2B, not B2C.
Okay, great. Thank you. And go ahead.
My name is Nawe, founder and CEO of Coinback. So we have a problem where, as a traveler, we travel around, but we have all these coins that we can't use it over. So we have a leftover coins that you just bring it back home, and you won't be able to use it anymore. So we're offline crowdfunding donation fund, offline crowd donation platform where we're going to set up a coin punning machine in the airport. So before leaving the country, you can put all these coins in the coin punning machine, and those money would be sent back to the country for the donation purposes. And you can choose which donation organization you want to donate it to. And right now we have 8 NGO partners, and we're also talking to the King Power so that in the future the traveler can also get coupons where they could be able to spend it in the airport for food, last minute, duty-free souvenir shopping as well. We're still at this prototype stage. We're making the prototype right now, and yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you all for being my guinea pigs and being involved in this. So I wanted to so I'm talking about lean today, and it's a scientific method. It's a science. And to prove its usefulness, I'm using you guys as guinea pigs. Thanks for being part of my experiment. I just wanted to ask really quickly, how clear was it to everybody what their project is? What problem they have, what customer they're targeting, what the solution is, these key things at least. Maybe what unique value that their products or their ideas offer. How clear was it? Was it really, really clear? I'd say nobody's going to say anything, so I'll just say it myself. I would say they did a decent job, but could it improve? Probably. I'm going to help you with some process to improve that. And this is just a demonstration of applying process to something that is really simple, like explaining and pitching your idea or your project, and applying process to it to improve the product of it, to improve the outcome. So we went through feedback here. So I'm first going to go over a few lean subjects and things like this, and then we're going to go back and you're going to pitch again using a process that I give you. Okay? So now it's time to get into lean. And what is lean about? the concept of MVP, minimum viable product, otherwise known as viable minimum product, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And lean can apply to everything. So lean startup applies to lean. Lean manufacturing applies to the old manufacturing industry with Toyota and things like this. But lean is a scientific method to building new businesses. It is a science. It's not guesswork. It actually is a science. There is methods and algorithms and metrics and these kinds of scientific data and so on that you can apply to building your business. And that's what lean is all about. So I want to now give you guys, this isn't really, this is so simple that you wouldn't really call it lean as so much of an in-depth scientific method or a scientific process, but it is enough to demonstrate the purpose of it. So now I'm going to ask you guys to understand this, and then they're going to pitch again using this. And I think you guys, everybody in the room, especially people that pitch, are going to see a drastic difference in the clarity of the pitch. So we're going to use a technique called the Mad Lib. And this is the Mad Lib. We are solving the problem of, state your problem. Name at most 3 key problems that you're solving. Okay? 4, state your customer. Who's your main customer? I'm sure you might be solving a lot of problems and you might be targeting a lot of customers, but just pick the main problem or at most 2, maybe 3 problems. The less is more in this kind of thing. Who's your main customer? Try to stick to 1. By creating, what is the core product or solution? Again, you probably have a lot of features and a lot of like, oh, I'm going to do so much stuff with this, it's going to be crazy and great, and it's going to do so many things, but pick the core value of what you're actually launching with, right? That will, and then fill in the results that people can actually visualize and believe this is going to be like an ROI, a return on investment for me using this product. What am I going to actually get out of that? So again, please stand up and follow this format. First of all, take 10 seconds, or maybe a little bit more. Think about what is your problem, who's your customer, what is the main feature of your product, and what are the results that people will see or feel or achieve by using that product. Okay, think about it really quickly. 10 seconds, go. All right, go ahead.
So basically, we're solving a problem of restaurants not being open at night, not being open early in the morning, less opening hours of restaurants, by creating for restaurants.
Okay,
so we're
for
the restaurants and the diners as well.
Okay.
By creating a mobile app / web solution that will provide you with 24/7 instant confirmation to provide convenience to customers and restaurants.
Okay, that was a little bit more clear in the product and the company that he's pursuing. Go ahead.
We are solving the problems of complicated mobile plans and unmatched mobile plans for mobile users by creating applications and website platform that will deliver and recommend the best deal for their usage.
Wow, super clear, yeah? I already know what they're doing, but I got all of that. And you?
We're solving the problem of leftover coins that once you leave the country, you won't be able to use again, and you can't exchange it, and it's heavy, and once you bring it back home, it's just going to be a waste for travelers. By creating a coin counting machine, which will be located in the airport, that will allow users to get rid of their coins, choose the donation fund, as well as get a coupon.
Worked? Okay, science works. So these are just some kinds of processes and techniques that you can use and apply to everyday things, even as simple as explaining and pitching, that can drastically improve the results. Pitching, for example, what is the purpose of pitching? To explain what you're doing so that you can attract users, customers, investors, all these kinds of things. Employees to your company. You have to pitch them so that they want to work with you. So getting your message across clearly so that everybody understands it understands the core value of what you're doing, and can then decide, well, that's something that I'd be interested in doing. It's incredibly important, actually. Pitching is a very important thing. So these are just kinds of techniques that you can use to apply. Here's a technique that you can use to apply to survey. I'll take questions afterward. Write it down if it's really good, please, so we don't miss it. So this is another kind of technique that you can use to just, how many people have seen the thing on the before side, a form? Everybody has seen this. How many people have seen something like this? This is the same thing, but it engages you more. So this is just using a technique where they tested 2 different forms to see which one gave them better responses. A boring old form or a story that engages you and makes you want to fill out the rest of it. With your details, it becomes your story. It's the same information, right? But how much more interesting would it be to fill that out? So things like this are techniques that you can use to apply processes to fairly mundane, trivial things and get much better results. So this is just another recap on the Mad Lib that's a little bit more clear. Our customer is blank. They have the problem of blank. A solution could be blank. Risky assumptions to make that happen, blank. So you can fill this kind of a thing out and basically explain any company in the world, any product in the world, in 5 words or less on all this kind of stuff. And if you can't, then you just don't understand it yet. So, okay, we already did the other pitches. And that's part of validating and invalidating. And that's really what lean science is all about. It's a science about proving things. So how do you prove that a business is going to work before spending time and money to build it up? How do you prove some things are always going to be a mystery, or it's just a matter of how much time you put into it to figure it out. But you want to narrow down your assumptions. You want to narrow down the risk that you're taking. So take as little risk as possible in anything that you do. Because what is an entrepreneur? Somebody who takes risk, right? So if you're going to be taking risk all the time, it's good to take as little risk as you can. So lean is a technique developed by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, to do our profession, to take risk. It's a means to reduce the risk that we take, or the cost of that risk, rather. And a good example of how costly that risk can be is Nokia. How many here know this company called Nokia? Everybody? Okay. How many people have seen Nokia in the stores lately? I didn't see any hands. Exactly. So Nokia is a really old company. It's a Finnish company. I think it's a 100-plus-year-old company. It didn't start out as Nokia, but it started out in very old machinery and tools for farmers and industrial workers and things like this. And it got into technology. It was making toasters. It was making everything all the way up to mobile phones. And then it started doubling down on the technology in the last 20 years or so and getting into computers and hardware and mobile phones, electronics and things like this. And that became the brunt of their business. Well, they pretty much, in just the recent 6 years or so, 6 to 8 years now, failed. Why did they fail? Why were they the number 1 market owner of mobile phones? They were the number 1 market owner of mobile phones about 8, 10 years ago. And now they've disappeared entirely. They haven't been bought out. Like, their product lines haven't really been bought out. Yeah, I think Microsoft bought them, but their products really just don't exist in the market anymore. Why? Because they didn't adopt lean in their product development. They were developing new products all the time based on their assumptions and based on what their guesses were on what their customers wanted, but they weren't actually testing it. They weren't actually validating, okay, I'm going to spend $20 million doing R&D for this new phone, and then I'm going to I'm going to spend another $100 million making all the units, and then I'm going to start selling them. And I'm going to do it quietly in stealth, so nobody knows what I'm doing, and I'm just going to smash the market. That never happens. Never happens. So companies that do that always fail. Even a company as big as Nokia, that was pretty much written in stone. Their economic powerhouse was written in stone, but they crashed and burned because for just a few years they ignored this. They ignored their customers. They ignored the process of validating their products before they spent all their time and money to build them. And then they spent all their money for a good 6 years straight. And here's the famous CEO that did all that. He's an infamous guy in Finland now. I don't think he lives in Finland anymore. Actually, it was two CEOs. He was the worst one, and there was another one that came on to try to take his place, and he was pretty much just as bad. And those were the guys that basically said, I know what my customers want without talking to them, so I'm just going to build everything and spend all our company's money building it. So that's what can happen. That's what's at stake. So these are some of the tools that Lean Startup and this whole science has built up. There's a lot of different names for a lot of these different tools. I'll just briefly run over a bunch of them. I actually can't remember what the name of this board is. But I love canvases, so I just wanted to show a bunch of them. There's Kanban boards. There's Scrum boards. There's Agile boards. Things like this. This is all about process. Who knows what this is? Business Model Canvas, right? The BMC. Here's the official BMC. So this is how you plot out a business in a entrepreneurial venture. You don't make 500-page business plans because as soon as you put pen to paper, it's worthless. You throw it out the window because you don't know. You don't know any of these variables. So you have to make a business model that is interchangeable as much as possible because things are going to change. You are going to be wrong about what you think your business is going to do. Until it hits the market and is tested, you're wrong about it, guaranteed. So the business model canvas is one of the most important tools that we use in building startups because that's our entire business, right on that canvas. This is one that we've made ourselves, which is one of the tools that we use in a workshop that we run every 3 months or so called Lean Startup Series. And this is taking, let me go back. This is taking, so number 1, number 2, and number 3 and 4 there, the channels between UVP and solution. It's just taking those 3 elements out of the board and expanding it to just focus on those 3 elements. So this entire canvas just focuses on the first 3 to 4 elements in the BMC to figure out exactly who your customer is, what your problem is, and what your solution is. And you can tell here that I put a little tip in the first starting column for setting up your hypotheses in your test cases. That tip, do not define a solution until you've validated the problem. So that's a good point. How many people in here have an idea for business? How many people that have an idea for business have actually started by validating who the customer and what the problem is? Or did you just come up with an idea and say, that's a great idea, I'm going to go build that business? Okay. All of you have done that. These guys are just the brave ones that admit to it. Congratulations, you're better entrepreneurs than everybody else. So that's the most common thing. We have ideas and we're brainstorming and we think, oh, that's such a great idea. I'm going to go out and conquer the world with this thing. But who are you solving it for? And what is the actual problem you're solving? If you don't even know that, how can you define a solution? This is pure math. This is basic logical math. Customer plus problem equals solution. That's how easy it is. You cannot know what your solution is. You are wrong. I will bet I have a running bet for the last 13 years. I've never had anybody claim this. I have a running $10,000 bet. If you've just come up with an idea and you think it's correct, I will give you $10,000 if you can prove it to me with this canvas or with any other lean validation tool. Okay? Go and do that. Come up with just some random idea on the spot. Or if it's even something that you've had in your mind in the works for a while, hasn't been validated, prove to me that it is actually a good idea, that it is going to work, that it is a solution that is going to work. I will pay you $10,000. I've had that running bet for 13 years, and nobody's ever claimed it from me. Yep. Yep. Oh, Singapore. Yeah, Indian. So if you want to know what your solution is the idea. Like everyone comes up with, oh, I have a great business idea. But that's the solution. You're already jumping ahead 2, 3, 4. Right? You don't know 1. You don't know 2. You don't really clearly know 3. And so how can you know 4? It's just basic logic math. So this is a tool that helps you get to the first step is you've got an idea, go validate it. And when validating, it's important to know that there are no stupid questions. And I sort of put this as an irony here because there actually are stupid questions. Like, how do you get that backwards B, you know? I'm waiting for people to laugh, but okay. It's called a D. So there are actually stupid questions, but not really when it comes to trying to validate what you're trying to do. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid that your questions sound silly or might seem stupid. It's okay to ask stupid questions. If she didn't know what a D was, well, she just learned something new, so that's fine. So I'm going to wrap this up with there's some very common myths, Pavel, about what lean startup is. There's a big problem right now in developing startup and tech ecosystems in Southeast Asia, for example, where all these words keep coming out, especially you read a book from the Valley or something like this, and you hear a bunch of words, and you didn't quite really understand what it meant. So you try to start using it, and then everyone else is using it. And a few years later, nobody actually knows what the fuck they're talking about. That's a big problem, because if none of us actually know what we're talking about, well, how can we succeed in an industry? So vocabulary is important. And lean is a very, very misused word. Myth number one, lean is about cheap. So a lot of people say like, oh, I've got such a lean business. Oh, really? So you validate everything? Oh, no, I just don't spend any money. Okay, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. This is something I hear every day. Thank you, Pavel, for doing my daily one today. So no, it's not every day, but it's pretty often that I hear this. People think that lean has many meanings in the English dictionary. Yes, lean does mean that it's slim. So you can't use the word lean, but if you're using it in the context of the startup industry and the technology industry, and you use lean to say that your budget is lean or your business is lean or something like this, because it's small or you don't burn, then it's incorrect. You're just incorrectly using vocabulary. Lean is about speed. Speed is higher burn, so you're actually spending more money faster. The reason that you want to have a higher burn and spend more money faster is because you want to find your fit. You want to learn as much as possible about your problem and your solution and your product and your market as quickly as possible, so that in the long run, actually it might be cheaper, maybe. Because if you find your fit faster and you know exactly what you're supposed to be building, then you're not fumbling over yourself all the time, worrying about, oh, if I build this or if I do that, options, options, options. If you have a really good process in testing everything and getting to it as quickly as possible, which might cost more money, then you're going to be able to do better business faster, which in the long run means you're going to start making money faster, which means that it probably will be cheaper, but not necessarily. So lean is about long-term success. It's not about saving money. Myth 2 is that lean startup is only for tech. Definitely not. Startups are not only tech businesses, and I don't want to get into the definition of startup, but just to quickly iterate, startup is a temporary organization that is designed to search for a scalable, repeatable business model. That's Steve Blank's famous definition. And in so, as startup is used in the lean startup definition and in the term itself, lean startups are not only for tech, because startups can apply to everything. Startups can be non-tech businesses as well. The lean part in the lean startup is about business waste management science. So, and this dates all the way back to, at least I credit Benjamin Franklin as the father of business waste management science, because he was a scientist, first and foremost. He was one of the founding fathers of the United States, probably a failed enterprise, and depends on what you think. But he also created 33 businesses throughout his life that were all successful. And I said he was a scientist. Why did he create 33 businesses that were successful throughout his life as a scientist? Well, because he was actually an enterprising individual that took the science that he knew, the scientific process, and he applied it to building his business. So he was one of the first, at least, major figures that brought science into the business world. So this is not new. It's 200 years old. Taking a scientific method into the business building world. It's not new. Japan itself as a country is a really good example of how scientific business practice was used. Japan would be a third world country today with nothing if they didn't apply science to their businesses. One of the first businesses that became a big industry giant, Japanese owned, Japanese led, expanded all over the world, from Japan after World War II, when Japan was decimated, was Toyota. Everyone knows Toyota. Toyota would not exist today without something that they adopted in the early 60s called lean manufacturing. And they are pretty much the industry leaders of the science of lean manufacturing even today. Toyota learned that, well, after the war, the United States conquered Japan and was flooding the Japanese market with Fords and Chevys and all of these cars and automobiles and trucks and machinery and so on. And they were flooding the Japanese market at no profit. They were even losing money just to flood the Japanese market with these products. How is a Japanese local small car manufacturer going to compete with the country that just conquered them and is flooding the market with their products? It's not possible, right? It's not possible. So how does Toyota exist today? Well, they looked at the Japanese market and they said, okay, we cannot compete with these big Chevy cars that have leather seats and radios and all this kind of nice bells and whistles, and it only costs $5,000. We can't compete that. It costs $10,000 to make that. How can we compete with that? We don't have the resources. So what they said is, well, let's actually validate what our customers, what the Japanese customers actually want. Do they want leather seats? Okay, well then let's not put them in there. Let's not waste the money on leather seats if our Japanese customers don't actually want leather seats, if it's not important to them. Do they want, fancy radios and big wide cars with, big wheel sockets and all these, big size wheels, all these kinds of things that the, typical big 1960s American cars had? No, they didn't actually care about that stuff. What Japanese customers really wanted after the war was working, functional, very easy to use, compact, cheap, efficient machinery. So that's what Toyota built. That's why Toyota exists today. That's why Japan is a first world economy and not a third world country. So that's all about lean. So that's how powerful lean and this scientific method can be. And to recap, lean is a scientific approach to solving uncertainty. When you're building a new company, when you're building a new enterprise, there's like everything. You don't know anything. You think you know, but you don't know anything. So you need to be comfortable saying to yourself, I don't know, and use lean to solve the things that you don't know. That's what lean is for. Myth number 3, lean startups replace vision with data. So a lot of people are sitting here uncomfortably now because I'm attacking your ideas. And I am. I'm attacking all of your ideas. And you might be uncomfortable with that. But you shouldn't be, because what I'm attacking is not actually your vision and your idea of what you want to do with your life. What I'm attacking is your assumptions, or the fact that you're just making assumptions. I'm attacking that. So if you have a vision of a problem that you're really passionate about, that you really want to solve, a vision of what kind of company you want to build, you don't need to kill that if the data that you get from the market says that that's not right. You don't need to remove the vision and the goals of your life and your aspirations just because the data says that that's a wrong path to get there. What you have to change is your path. So you need to change the trajectory and the means to get to your vision, to eventually solve the problem that you're passionate about. And those assumptions along the way are what you need to challenge. So it's very, very good. In fact, most of the biggest companies, especially in tech in the world, were built by people who had a very strong passion for some idealistic issue that they wanted to solve, or build a product that opened up new possibilities and opportunities for people and things like this. You don't need to remove that. In fact, you shouldn't remove that. You should really stick strongly to your passions and the problems that you feel really passionate about, that you want to solve for the world. You just need to challenge the assumptions on the path to getting there. Lean Startup is about validating your vision with reality. So it's just not reality when we think we know how to get from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and we're starting at A, and we think we know all the steps to get to Z. You don't. And thinking that you do is actually sort of crazy when you think about it. So Lean Startup is about validating that vision with reality, making it realistic. Vision is very important to keep Lean Startups focused. So you know what Z is, and you're starting at A, and you validate each step along the way, and it's going to be completely different than you thought, but that's fine. That's good. I I was going to tell a story about GPS thing here. I keep forgetting that story when I... Oh yeah, okay, I remember now. So think about a GPS. You've got a GPS on your phone, and you don't know where you want to go. So you've got Google Maps open, and you don't even know where you want to go. What the hell is a GPS good for then? If I don't even know where I want to go, well, the GPS is not going to tell me. If I'm sitting there telling my phone, like, tell me where I want to go, it's not going to do anything for me. So I'm doing it backwards. But that's actually what a lot of us as human beings do. We don't know how to get where we're going, but we're basically we're making those statements that that's where we want to go, but we don't know how to get there. So it's the inverse of a GPS knows how to get there, but you need to tell it where to go. We often think that we know how to get there, but we don't. Okay. I don't know if people got that or not. So another concept of lean startup is MVPs. So MVP, everybody know what MVP means. Minimum viable product, most viable product. So MVPs must appeal to all possible customers. That's a typical lean startup myth. Absolutely not. An MVP is actually for testing customers to figure out what your end product is supposed to be. So you might make multiple MVPs. You should be making multiple MVPs. If you haven't put a product into the market and tested it, then the first one that you do put into the market is an MVP. Whether you spent a lot of time and money to build it or not, it still is a test. It is still a test. So no matter what, if you're going to build a product, it is going to be a test. And you might have to put a product into the market multiple times to figure out exactly the right fit to make that product work. If you think that you're just going to build your product and it's going to be successful, you're wrong. So if you know that from the beginning, if you know that whatever first product you put into the market anyway, it's just going to be a test anyway, well, then don't spend a lot of time on it. Don't spend a lot of money on it. Make it as slim as possible to just test what you want to learn from it. Right? Makes sense. So MVPs are about segmenting your focus. Okay, I want to learn who my customer is. I want to learn more about the problem. I want to learn more about the product market fit. I want to learn more about my competition. I'm going to release a product that is identical to my competition except for one little thing just to see what the difference is. These are versions of MVPs. And you should be going through multiple MVPs. There is no company that has been successful with a big successful product that has not gone through multiple MVPs. Who knows Google? Did you know that Google is testing us every single day with MVPs, whether you know it or not? They put in new pop-ups and new versions and new formats of Gmail and search and calendar and all their products. They change them around all the time, and it's in and out. It's so quick because Google is one of the best lean startups in the world. In fact, it probably is the best lean startup in the world. They're testing us all the time. They're putting out MVPs there constantly, every single other day. Right? And they've gotten so good at that I can pretty much make a statement that I think everyone in this room would agree with. Who would agree with the statement that Google's products are all good? All of Google's products, like if you think of Google and their products, you're confident that like Google products are good. They're just good. They know what I need. Every time I use a Google product, it just works. It does exactly what I want it to. How did they do that? Huh?
I'll disagree.
Okay, great. Most people would agree. It depends on if that's an actual product that you want to use or not. But Google, this is what Google is known for. There's a lot of Google products I don't like because they just don't do what I don't need that tool or something. But I still see Google as a company that creates products that are just seamless. They always work. How do they do that? They do that because they test and validate things and they fail 50 times just to figure out exactly what you want and exactly what you need. And you don't even know what's happening because they're so fast and so efficient at it. So, myth number 5. So all I have to do is follow the lean startup God. Well, a lot of people are looking at this now and probably thinking, oh, so give me the Bible. No, it's not a manual. It's not a to-do list. It's not a set of rules. Do this and you'll succeed. No, not at all. These are just a bunch of tools and techniques, and it's a philosophy of applying your assumptions and your ideas into a scientific process of validation. That's what it's about. Lean startup is not a manual. It's a scientific method again. I'm repeating this again and again and again. It's about adaptation and learning. So in startups, what do we see? What does a traditional business think of when they say milestones? We've hit a milestone today. What do you think of when you have a business, you've got 200 employees, and you're like, yay, we hit a milestone today? What would most people think that means? You? Her? She wasn't paying attention. Okay, you.
Business valuation,
Okay.
like Apple's goals to be worth $1 trillion.
Okay. So revenue, more or less, like how much money they made or something. Yeah. Okay. What else might be a business milestone? What do you think?
Well, achieving any sort of thing that you set yourself up as a goal to reach in the way of performance or any other target, predefined.
Okay. So like a KPI, basically.
Yes, pretty much.
In lean startups, our one and pretty much only milestone is hitting a learning point. When we can definitively prove that we have just learned something with hard empirical data. I can now prove that my customers actually have this problem, and this is the demographic of the customer, and this is the problem that they have. And I can prove it now because I've gone out and I've tested them. Those are the only milestones in a lean startup. It's not revenue, it's not users, it's not growth, because those things are a result of learning. You just need to execute the learning, and then you've got that. So learning is the biggest milestone, sometimes the only milestone in a lean startup. Not traction, not revenue, things like this. Another myth is, so a lot of people, especially software developers, would say, there's another term in the industry called CI, continuous integration, and CD, continuous deployment. So a lot of people will say, oh, okay, well, CI and CD are just about shipping every 6 hours. Like, you need to just ship a new version. Work on a feature, ship, always ship. So a lot of people get into this mode of thinking that these are rules that they just need to follow and then it's okay. But what they're doing is they're just following rules. They're not using the tools where they're needed. So that's what this myth was all about. Don't just use, don't think that this is an instruction list and a manual. You have to fit the tools and the methods to the actual task. MVP means build something small and ship. So yeah, MVP is a little bit misleading, and I like to reverse it around sometimes to say VMP, viable minimum product. So first, your product needs to be viable. It needs to actually, like again, MVP is a test. So your product needs to be viable first, then it needs to be minimal, then it needs to be a product. So sometimes it's good to think about it in the reverse. MVP should be the smallest product that is also most viable for, I should maybe put testing your users and customers. Viable first, minimum second. So those are the 6 myths that I went through. How am I doing on time? What time is it? Yeah, it's good. Okay. So that's pretty much my presentation today, and I hope that it was instructional and fun, and not everybody fell asleep. And I just wanted to wrap up with who I am, what we're doing. Some of my team is here as well. So we're TechRyan. We started out as a founders organization of various startups here in Bangkok, actually. We're now a Pan-Asian organization, but we started actually here in Bangkok. This is a Thai-made entity that is going to conquer Asia, so made in Thailand. So TechRyan was initially built by me and 5 other founders of startups just about 2 years ago. And we were all founders of startups here in Thailand, trying to build our companies, having a lot of problems because this is not a developed ecosystem. We started having lunch every month and just chatting together about like what problems we had. So we started doing some activities that would reduce our cost, make everything more efficient, save us time, and solve risk for all of us building our companies. So we started out doing just a few events and activities that would help us solve key little problems really efficiently and cost effectively and so on, saving us months of time to just get something done really quickly. And it turned into an organization that now has a few hubs around Asia of similar groups of founders building up activities and events. And now in Thailand, we've even built an incubator. So this is a response to one of the biggest problems that we saw here in Southeast Asia is that most of the startups out here with just so little exposure and so little background history in this industry, like Lean Startup itself, most people don't even know what that is. So An incubator is also a new thing out here. We're the first one in Southeast Asia, the first private one in Southeast Asia anyway. That is very common in startup ecosystems. And it is a space where it's a professional office environment where startups can come and get funding and get resources and get mentorship and get connections, be in a stimulating environment to build their products, to do all of these processes and to learn and get all the support that they need to build their companies and be successful. So that's our latest, biggest agenda out here in Thailand with our group in Thailand. So our incubator is all about bringing startups from their idea stage all the way to Series A. So anywhere that a startup is between idea and raising a Series A round, that is where we look at startups and we get them properly to a really strong Series A. Because even some people that are quite farther along have made a lot of mistakes just because they haven't done it before. So we try to back them up and look at some of the mistakes they made and set a really strong foundation. Things like this. We give a $250,000 US dollar incubation package of products and services. And then we also work with startups at a fairly early stage. Most of them aren't quite ready for funding yet, but we still want to work with them. Otherwise, we'd pretty much be just shoving everyone away and declining everyone. So we give the incubation package first, and then we build them up to be ready for seed investment. And then we do a seed investment of between 100 to 1 million in seed funding. And we're pretty much the only people in town so far that will do this kind of, and this is real funding. I mean, 50K. In fact, I would say anything less than 200K is not worth taking. If you need to make a seed round, take less than 200K. But if your company isn't up to par yet to get at least 200, 250K, just do a little bit more work, get it ready, get it up to at least the 250K round, because anything less, you can't do anything with it. You can't grow. You can't test stuff and validate. So to grow really big. So we really want to bring Silicon Valley style mentality and funding and things like this to Thailand and then Southeast Asia. So that's what we're doing. We're Bangkok's premier startup office. We're Southeast Asia. We're now also Southeast Asia's largest founder organization with founders in many different countries around Southeast Asia. A really good connection network. Yeah, and that's pretty much what we're doing. I spent a few years in the Valley, and I miss it, but I want to be here. So I want to build Silicon Valley here. I don't want to go back to the Valley. I'm sick of it. So let's just build the Silicon Valley here. That's what I say, and we can all do that together. Go, go, go. Let's do it. So you can go to our website, get some more information about us, and come visit us. Our doors are open all the time. Come and visit. We're at the penthouse floor of Liberty Plaza Tower over on Tonglor. Everybody's welcome. And that's the end of my slides. I wanted to mention one thing while I still have the mic. We're having some really big events this year that everyone here is invited to. And I encourage you not only to come, but to, if you have an interest in it, get engaged with us. If you have some mutual business value that you think you could benefit from, come and talk to us. Let's do business. We're going to be running an event called Demo. You can go to www.demo.com, D-E-M-O. So we'll be running this for Southeast Asia, at least for the next 3 years, and see how it goes. But this is something that is really big in the Valley. It's one of the top 10 tech events in the world in Silicon Valley every year. And it's basically a launch stage for companies to launch new products. So this is something that we think is really valuable for startups out here. Tech companies, especially startups, it doesn't really matter if they're startup per se, but tech and startups. If you have new products to launch, having a big international stage to launch it on, they'll even be streaming the event here in the States on the live website. So we'll have investors from the States fly out, some of the biggest names in tech and things like this. Robert Scoble and some old buddies and things like this will come out and show some of their products and connect with you guys and maybe even help you bring your products to the States or the Western market and things like this. So if you guys think that that's a valuable event for yourselves as startups launching products, or if you're find some kind of value with that in doing some kind of mutual business or marketing value or whatever, exposure and so on, let us know. Come and visit us. Give us an email. Call, whatever. We're always looking for people that are interested in doing business with us and helping to build this ecosystem, just like Sassy Entrepreneurship Center. So that put this kind of thing on. So thank you guys for doing that as well. Demo is actually going to be run in joint with another event called SeedStars World. So it's going to be a really long weekend of big events. SeedStars World is a pitch funding contest where we fly the winner to Switzerland. all expenses paid, flight, hotel, a week in Switzerland, all paid to go to big conferences and the final SeaStars World event where they can pitch to European investors for up to $500,000 of investment. So that's another event that we do, which will be on Friday. Demo will be on Saturday. And then a big expo where people can set up booths to show all of their products and things like this will be on Sunday. Huge weekend. This is going to be in mid-August, so mark your calendars. I was going to put a thing on the slide, I forgot. Like a true startup, I did this about 20 minutes before I came here. So, well, it's an old presentation, but I whipped up a bunch of changes. So that's me for today. Did anybody want to get up and use the stage to present something? Maybe a 60-second pitch? We got any ambitious founders in the room?
Anyone?
Yeah?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
How do you validate like a game or like other entertainment like products?
Yeah, so actually games can definitely be validated. That's something that some of the best gaming companies, you know Blizzard, if you know games. So how does Blizzard always make these games that are so freaking popular? They've only made, what, like 5 games in their lifetime? And it's a 15-plus-year-old company. But every single one of them is huge. It's a genre-defining game, right? You can name them all. Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo. They have 3 franchises. That's it. That's it. Every game they make is huge. It's a genre-defining thing. They're one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. How do they do that? Because they validate. Because they listen to their customers, they listen to the gamers, they find out what features and what kind of mechanics and what kind of game play style and what kind of feelings. There's a lot of psychiatry that goes into it. So there's a huge amount of validation in science in many different disciplines that go into the testing methods for gaming. So I'm not answering your question directly, but I'm setting you on a path to investigate further because I couldn't answer that in 2 hours. Yep.
Your presentation very interesting, and thank you. But, I greatly appreciate your thoughts about something that's been troubling me for the past few months, which is you started when you were talking about the Mad Lib, which is the question of the customer. If we have a business where somebody is producing something which gets laid out on a store counter, and the customer comes around, buys it, uses it, eats it, whatever. It's clear what customer means.
Right.
But there are a lot of situations, I think, where the meaning of customer is not so obvious. In particular, the person who uses it may not be the same person that pays for it or specifies it. Let me think of an example.
Facebook?
Huh?
Facebook?
Intel? No, not Facebook, and I don't. Maybe Intel, but I'm not thinking of what you're thinking of. But there's a big problem now with testing pharmaceuticals. Okay, in that the pharmaceutical companies have a big investment, a big incentive to test the pharmaceuticals, but that basically means that the pill takers have to cooperate in the sense of actually taking the pills. But it's also desirable for the pharmaceutical companies to know whether they took the pills. Well, actually, 50 to 70% compliance is considered to be pretty good. So, if you had a product which would tell the pill companies, the pharmaceutical companies, whether the pill had been taken and when, who would be buying it? Well, in a sense, the customer is the pill taker. That might be attached to the pill bottle. But in another sense, it's the pharmaceutical company that really is the mover here. They're the ones who are willing to pay big bucks to have this kind of a thing. And I think there's a lot of other situations like that. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that. What customer really means.
Yeah, that's a good thing that you brought up. And I knew after about 10 seconds of what you said, I didn't want to interrupt you because it's a good example that you gave. But this is a clear definition of customer-user split. So for example, I'm assuming a lot of things, of course, but in your example, let's say you have like a smart cap for a bottle. I've seen a few of those. So a smart cap for a bottle that goes on the bottle, but it's provided to the pill taker as a tool for the doctor. So the doctor's buying it and giving it to the patient, who's the user. The customer is the doctor who buys it or the hospital who buys it. They're the ones paying the money. They're the customer. But the user is actually the pill taker. They're not the ones buying it.
Right, but even the doctor isn't really the customer because they're not the ones that are motivated to do the testing. It's the pharmaceutical company that's
Whoever
motivated.
pays is your customer.
Okay.
Facebook's another good example. And most tech projects do end up coming up with a little bit more complex business models where they make money in different ways than charging their users. It's 2015. You can't make software and sell it anymore.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Microsoft is even finally coming on board that. Like, they're the #1 company that invented the whole model of selling software. And I'm a software engineer, so I wish I could make software and sell it, but I'm actually quite happy that we can't anymore. Because there's much better ways to make money than selling software. It's actually sort of stupid to sell software. But this new model was invented because a lot of software engineers, through the shift of the millennium, late 90s, early 2000s, started inventing new business models. They started inventing new ways to make money with their software rather than selling it to the users. So what that created, which is actually very, very common now even his product has this. His product has a very clear customer-user split. Who's paying him money? That's the customer. Who's actually using it? Probably even more than the customer is the user. Facebook's a good example. Do you use Facebook? Yes or no? Doesn't matter. But people that use Facebook don't pay for it. Who pays for Facebook? Businesses pay for Facebook. They pay for your eyeballs when you're using Facebook to attract business.
Facebook users pay with their attention, with their time.
Right. So it becomes other forms of currency. Everybody's paying in some way, but it becomes a different kind of currency. So in the strictest business sense, in the business model, in BMC, the business model canvas, your actual customer would be businesses. Facebook's business model canvas, in the customer section, it's not end users. That's a UVP section, right? That's a channel section to get to the customers, but that's not their actual customer. The customers are businesses.
Well, I have another example which I'm hard put to fit. I mean,
You want to stand up here?
Huh?
You want to stand up here?
No, that's all right. I'm perfectly happy sitting here. I get to stand up there often enough when I'm teaching. I have the actual product that I'm working on right now is a situation where the government will specify that the product has to be used, but the purchaser is the contractor who does the work.
Yeah, so?
So who's the customer there?
Whoever's paying. Whoever is paying.
That's hard to even figure out. You're the customer, you're the taxpayer, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
The government's paying.
Yeah, government's
paying for it. Okay, so the government's a customer. Yeah. Okay, good. I've had so many people ask me this in the last, days, weeks, months, and
Sometimes
I have to wander around a bit in order to answer it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty common. I mean, a lot of other industries are starting to follow on. I mean, tech is all about innovation. It's all about technology, innovating things, and science. Science and engineering is all this industry about innovating things. So we are typically the leaders in creating new kinds of concepts and models for how to do business. But a lot of other businesses are following on that suit now. I mean, you're probably going to see in the next 10 years a lot of very traditional businesses that might even start doing free stuff where it's like, wow, free. And then as soon as one person does it, everybody's got to do it because they can't compete. As soon as one person figures out how to offer you free hotel and make money some other way, like advertising in the hotel room or like, I don't know, budget airlines. Who was the first to create a budget airline? They disrupted the market. They disrupted the market because they created a new model, and that was just something small, but they created a model where they shifted business value from one into the other to still make the same amount of money, but not charge users $1,000 for a flight ticket to Singapore. It's like $63 on special, right?
Actually, I like your idea about free hotels, and we have discussed last night about the real estate startups, and I think if we can launch something here in Thailand,
I'd be interested to see someone.
We'll be interested, yeah. So if you can go with this idea, come see us.
Come see us. We'll help you build it.
Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, go ahead. You, sir.
A little like you, I think. I started my career in one of the high-tech hubs in America.
Cool. Where about?
Much earlier than you.
Okay.
But I have a question. How you ended up here? Did it have to do with business?
Yeah, it did.
What's your perception of people in this room and the startup business in Thailand?
You missed my, what was it, yesterday at the Hive? Yeah. Man, it feels a long time ago. That was yesterday?
2 days ago.
Okay. Yeah, you missed my presentation 2 days ago at the Hub where I talked just about my journey here and why I'm here, and the business opportunity that I see here, which is why I'm here. So I've been fairly international in my life, both because I was born a dual, even a triple citizen. So I've had families, like both sides of families in different countries, and traveled a lot, and I ended up being one of those global citizens, which I think is more people should. So I also carried my career with me, and I went to a lot of different places. I've built startups now in 5 countries: U.S., Sweden, New Zealand, India, Israel, Spain, I guess you could say, and now here. Was that 6? Yeah. So I don't really count Spain. I've always been very international and very, I don't really care where I live. The world to me is just the world. I can live anywhere I want. So that's not a hurdle to me, just because of me personally, I guess. Helps to have 5 passports too. So that's not a hurdle to me, but when I came here, I was actually passing through. I came here 2.5 years ago, and I was just passing through. And I was actually on my way to Singapore because I was in Israel building my current startup, and I wanted to move because Israeli's ecosystem is very developed, but they don't do big things in Israel. They build really good tech, but they don't know how to build big businesses. And because it's so well defined in Israel, it's really hard to do something against the entire ecosystem, the entire industry. Nobody wants to do that. Not investors, not employees, not co-founders, nobody. So if you're trying to do something that goes against a really well-established mentality of an industry, you're fighting against a tsunami. And that's what I was doing in Israel. So I decided to leave because I wanted to do something much more ambitious and much bigger than just build tech and sell it. So I looked for other places to go, and I went to Washington, D.C. I actually spent 3 to 4 months just traveling around the world. And mostly I went to Western Europe and, the normal culprits. Some of the places I knew, some knew that I didn't. I always wanted to live in Boston, for example, and be part of the Boston Circle up there. I still want to someday. Go maybe do something at MIT and stuff like this. I ended up checking out Singapore because I was invited out there from some government people that I met in Israel, and stopped in Bangkok for 2 weeks. Went to a few events just because I was here 2 weeks. What am I going to do? I can't sit still for 2 weeks. So I went to, actually, there's a guy named Jeremy Tissou. He's a designer here, and he runs some events. I went to 2 of his events. I met some really interesting people. I didn't think that there was any tech here at all. I was here in Thailand in 2001 as a stupid kid tourist, getting lured by all the tuk-tuks and, paying 50,000 baht tourist package, and they're sending me up country and stuff like this. And, so that was my view of Thailand when I was 20, 21. Hadn't been here since. So I didn't expect much else. And I came here and I started meeting people that were telling me about the business opportunity and how many problems exist here. And as an entrepreneur, you love problems. I mean, problems are the number one thing that we look for because we solve problems. That's what an entrepreneur is. We take risk and take initiative to solve problems. We create jobs by solving problems. That's sort of what I define an entrepreneur's role in society as. It's nothing fancy, and you might see the Facebook movie, and I hate the Facebook movie because it's brought a lot of bad publicity to this industry. We as entrepreneurs, what is our role in society? We create jobs. That's really the number one role in society that we have. Dentists take care of your teeth. Doctors make sure you're healthy. Entrepreneurs create jobs. And usually we solve problems in order to do so. Here in Thailand, and being in the middle of Southeast Asia, which is the biggest and the fastest growing economy in the world, this is where we can make something massive happen. We can build companies out here that are bigger than the countries they're in. I'm just going to be quiet after saying that for a few seconds. We can, like Apple. Apple's bigger than Thailand. It's an economic superpower bigger than the countries here, the entire countries. All right? We can make companies like this. I've been around the guys building companies like this. The problems here, all the ingredients to build these kinds of companies are here right now. They're nowhere else. They're nowhere else. So if you want to build huge companies that can change the world and solve huge problems, you're here right now in the right place. So I would rather be here than anywhere else in the world to build a startup. It's a lot of work though. There's a lot of things going against it. It's a lot of, we built a whole incubator just to start building companies. It's like, you can't just build a startup. No, you need to have an incubator. You need to build a society. You need to build a community. You need to train people. There's a lot of stuff, but we're doing it. We're taking the steps, and then we'll build amazing stuff.
Well, we have
And
to
you
take
guys will.
last question here,
Okay.
and then we'll take the rest outside.
Okay.
Hello. As you have emphasized a lot about we have to validate our customer and our problem, I want to hear some suggestion from you on how we should validate those. How we can
the
validate.
canvas that I showed you, I can walk you through quickly, and I think that's a good wrap up for the end of it. Cool. So here's how you can validate your customer and problem and solution. So the way that this canvas works, this is a tool, and it's got a method to it. We actually run this event, which is a full weekend event, 3 full days. I think you were part of it, yeah? Yeah. So he was even part of the last one that we did. We're due to run another one of these pretty soon. I think maybe next month we can do that if you want to partake in that. This is probably the best starting tool that you can use to, and this workshop that we designed around it, to start building your business and validating it in the right way. So you start out with all of your hypotheses. Now, when you think you know who your customer is, you're making a hypothesis. You're making a guess. It's an educated guess. That's what a hypothesis is. So you're guessing. And it's good to use the word hypothesis because you are guessing. You don't know. You are guessing. So who do you think your customer is? You write that on a sticky card and you put it up there. That's your first hypothesis. So now you take that sticky card and you go down to the bottom corner here, core assumptions, and you make a bunch of assumptions about that customer. So let's say that your customer is Russian guys. So your customers are Russian guys 20 to 40. So that's who you think your customer is. Wait, I'm going down a bad path here. Anyway, so Russian guys 20 to 40, that's your customer. What kind of assumptions can we make about Russian guys 20 to 40? Oh, I'm setting myself up bad. Mafia, divorced 5 times. They hang around in Phuket. They're very violent. They're good at math. So you can make a bunch of assumptions, right, about who you think your customer is. So after you've made a bunch of assumptions here, you write those down on sticky cards too. You put them here. You take the riskiest of those. Now, if your idea of targeting a customer is going to work, what is the riskiest one of those assumptions? It's a good idea to test them all, but sometimes you can't test them all. So take the riskiest one first and keep testing the riskiest and the riskiest and the riskiest. The riskiest assumption maybe is that all Russians 20 to 40 are mafia.
How to test that? We go to talk to them.
I'm not done
one
yet.
or two of them.
Hold on. So let's say that the riskiest assumption of Russian males 20 to 40 is that they're all mafia. So if our business is going to work, they have to be mafia. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to say that's my risky assumption. I choose a method to test it. And in this case, you can do surveys, or you can do research on statistics, or whatever. So let's say you just choose a survey method. You want to go out and you want to ask people, do you know the mafia, or how well do you know the mafia? This was really stupid. So you want to come up with a survey mechanic to try to elicit that information from your target demographic. You're only going to talk to Russian males 20 to 40 because that's who you're targeting. Or maybe you would talk to people who know those kinds of people, but you'd talk about them. And you would want to elicit this information from them. So then before you go out and test, you want to set yourself up with a minimum success criteria, which is what is the ratio of successful tests in this test case that would satisfy you to be confident that that is a good target, that you've nailed down your target. You typically want to start with at least 50% and then raise that bar. No business ever knows 100% accurately exactly who their customer is, exactly what the problem is, exactly what the solution is. But your goal is to get to 99%. And why is Google good for 99% of the room? Because they're good at this kind of stuff. So that's the kind of test method that you would make. Set a minimum success criteria, maybe 50, 60%. Go out and use the method on your target demographic. And then did you validate it or did you invalidate it? If you talk to 20 people, 20 to 40 Russian males, and you find out that only 2 of them are mafia and 18 are not, well, you've just invalidated that idea, that assumption. So that makes your customer hypothesis much less knowledgeable. It also means that you know more about your customer. So you can narrow down and narrow down. Now you're not going to target 20 to 40-year-old Russians that aren't mafia because you're making guns or something, I don't know. So yeah, bad examples. Anyway, does it make sense? You go through that with your customers, you go through that with your problem, and then when you have your customers and a problem proven and validated, you can then actually...
So we need to make clear about the customer first, then before identifying their problem.
I typically say it's good to start with either your customer or your problem. Doesn't really matter. If there's a problem that you really want to solve, go find out who has the problem. If you're more interested, it really depends on you. If you're interested in doing a business that caters to kids because you have kids, well, start with kids and then figure out what problems they have that you can solve. But if you're really passionate about a problem to solve, then start with the problem, validate that. Via validating a problem, you will learn about your customers. Via validating your customers, you will learn more about the problems they have. And when you have your customer and your problem, you're going to have some very, very strong indicators on what the solution is. So you can start setting up solution test cases and then go and test the solution as well. And the goal of this entire canvas is that by the end, you can prove, at least with 80+% certainty, that if you build a business around that customer with that problem, with that solution, it's going to work. $10,000.
Very clear. Thank you so much.
Still available. Okay, let's go. I'm losing my voice. Okay, thank you.
But otherwise, I'd like to say thanks to Efraim. He introduced himself. He explained everything already, so I have nothing more to add. So thanks everyone, and you guys can enjoy the snacks and some networking time after this. All right. So thanks for joining us today, and see you next time.
If anyone want to write down a really complicated URL, actually.